Again, guys, I'm Big Al Devlin, and welcome to the House of Devlin. And here today, I'm going to begin my series based upon the gods of the Nordic paganistic belief system. Now, a lot of these gods will cross over into all of the paganistic systems. In fact, they are. They are all the same pagan gods as all the other religions. However, I will be telling you their stories and their positions within their hierarchy and all that from purely a Nordic perspective, as I am a Nordic pagan. Okay, I will reference, where possible, Celtic references, so you can see sometimes the differences, how Celts saw particular gods, where in comparison to, for example, the Nords. But I will be mostly focusing on of course, the Nordic people. Now, I have done videos on the gods before. I've done 3 videos, I think, on Odin, and I've done 2 or 3 videos on Loki. These videos still stand. I will leave them up as it shows you my process of learning and developing as an individual within the world of paganism. I'm picking up more knowledge of what the gods are, who they are, what they're about, the intricacies and their diverse personalities, and the significance of the way that they think or act or rule or do whatever. It's these gods within all of the paganistic religions are complicated gods. They are not supreme beings like the God of Christianity or Allah or anything along those lines, where they're just all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful. It kind of makes them blank, really. You can't comprehend them. I just see I think of that, I just see like a white space, and that's it. I can't relate to it. Whereas the gods of the old religions were very much a reflection, really, of humans, or we were reflections of them, of course, because we were made within their image in many respects by Odin, as you may have learnt during the cosmology series that I have here on the House of Devlin. Other than that, I think as an introduction, I think that's far enough. You've got a lot to look forward to because there's a lot of gods to talk about. Some will be bigger videos than others. In fact, they may actually naturally split. I've got a camera now that splits it at around about 30 minutes into a second video, so you might have to watch some of the videos that I film in 2 parts. But yeah, 30 minutes. I mean, literally, some of the gods, there's a lot to talk about, over 30 minutes worth, but I'll try and keep it as precise as possible, but as detailed as possible as well, because what I want to do is I want these videos to be fully representative of the gods in question. I want you to have all the knowledge that I can find on the gods and make up your own mind, whether you like them, whether you follow them, whether you pray to them under certain circumstances, so on and so forth. I want you to engage your own mind and think, would I want that God involved in this situation? Okay. Now, the God that we're going to talk today about is, of course, Odin. Okay. Odin is the king and the ruler of Asgard. Okay, he is the king of all the gods and is typically known as the All-Father. Okay, we will be getting into that right at the end of the video as to why he's called the All-Father. It isn't actually an official title. He's called the All-Father for a good reason. But in most basic terms, he is known, as I say, simply as Odin. But in Old Saxon, he's known as Woden. Okay, W-O-D-E-N. In High German, Roten, or Woden, and in Proto-German as Rodenaz, or the master of ecstasy, as it translates. Okay, so you're starting to get an idea about who he is, the master of ecstasy, the ruler and king of all the gods, the All-Father. You can tell he's going to be a powerful and influential being, even if he really doesn't do much. That position alone and all these ways of describing him are, of course, indicative that this is a powerful, wise, and an involved God. Okay, there's no doubt about it. He gets involved within Midgard, which is Earth, essentially. Okay. Now, I've got notes in front of me because this is going to be such a long video. So bear with me whilst I sort of orientate myself, because one of the things is I do have amnesia, so I do have the tendency to forget certain things. So I've got notes to make sure that I don't forget any details whatsoever. So I've told you that he was the ruler of well, not the gods as such, but he was the ruler of the Aesir tribe of deities even. And that's an important distinction because, of course, there was an Aesir-Vanir alliance, and those together did form Asgard and, of course, the Vanheim. Okay, but he wasn't seen as the ruler of the Vanir, of the Vanheim. Okay, he was simply the ruler of the Aesir. So that is one important distinction. I don't know if it's the same in Celtic mythology, but in well, it probably isn't, because Tyr's the god in Celtic mythology. That is the king of Asgard. But nonetheless, he was only the ruler and king of the Aesir. But he had so much respect and so much power and stuff that and as I say, that there was an alliance between the Vanheim and the Aesir after the Aesir-Vanir war. Okay, and there was never any conflict or any question of his rulership that I know of during his entire time as king of Asgard. Okay, now, he did have a major influence at the beginning of creation. Okay, him and his two brothers, Vili and Ve, this trio killed the god Ymir. Okay, who was a giant, the first of all the giants, in fact, and probably the most powerful of all the gods. They killed him because Ymir was consumed by jealousy towards the Aesir, because the Aesir were quite a beautiful set of gods, basically. I mean, it was really just over beauty more than anything, and they had these divine powers that, I mean, he had his own powers, but he was blinded by their powers and their beauty so much that he didn't see the beauty that he had. He had the ability to create life at will. One of the greatest powers of them all, alongside his immense strength, size, toughness, everything else. But early on in the cosmos, Odin, Vili, and Ve, remember they're his two brothers, did have to destroy and kill Ymir. They had to, because if not, he would have done the same to them and to all of their tribe. Okay, yet they did so with grief, because Ymir was, up to the point where he started to lose his mind, a loved god. He was seen as the best of the gods because of his power of creation. He could create life, and this is very important in paganism. The ability to create life is something that is seen as being very hallowed, almost. It's very it's held in very high respect. To destroy is easy, to kill even easier, but to bring life into the world, that is quite difficult, or into the universe, especially spontaneously, just like that, without having to have a partner, because Ymir was capable of producing life without the influence of a female counterpart. Made him very loved amongst the gods. So, as I say, they did kill him with grief. in their hearts. And Odin was so grief-stricken that when he was tearing up his body, well, before I get to that point, Odin, Vili, and Ve were so grief-stricken that they decided that they couldn't just simply let the body of Ymir waste away, to disappear, or just to be left where they killed him, to be forgotten. And so they decided to make something out of his death. And remember, the paganism is all about cycles, essentially. Okay, life goes into death, but death goes into life. Creation, more to the point, goes into destruction. Destruction leads to creation. And you get it in a lot of things with time as well. It is all cyclical in nature. And so really we get this death, this destruction of a god. But from his destruction, we see the creation of an entire new realm, the realm of Midgard. And so Odin, Vili, and Ve actually took the body of Ymir, this mighty god, and turned him into a realm. They turned him into earth, essentially. Okay, they tore his bones out and used them to form the mountains and the land. The vegetation on earth was his hair. The waters was his blood. The skies were his brains. The clouds were his brains, and the sky was his skull, held up by 4 dwarfs named North, East, South, and West. Okay, so it's a nice story in some ways, because it explains it shows actually the understanding that the Nordic people had of basic astronomy, for starters. I mean, they were astrologers in the sense that they read the stars because they had to, because they were seafarers, and at night time you get lost on the sea if you don't read the stars. So we already are get a sign of the people that believed in these gods already sort of being represented through their belief system. Okay. However, despite being the king of Asgard, one of the great things about Odin that I personally love, a lot of people hate, but I personally love, is that he did leave quite often, very often in fact, on very self-interested quests. He was a selfish individual. Okay, he was a very single-minded individual, and you could say selfish or single-minded. To me, I say he was focused. Okay, he has a personality very similar to my own, an all or nothing approach. He had an interest in developing ultimately his wisdom beyond anything else. He wanted to be the wisest and most knowledgeable being in all of creation. He wanted to know the past, the present, and the future in complete clarity. And he wanted to be able to use magics to influence such things. To get to that point, obviously, that's a lot of hard work. And so that's often why he left Asgard, typically in the pursuit of wisdom, although sometimes it was in the pursuit of other things also. He did leave Asgard under different circumstances, and I'll tell you those stories another time. Okay, but he really was a relentless seeker of wisdom, but he was also a relentless giver of wisdom also. The wisdom that he had, he saw it as communal. He saw that if he gained wisdom, it was his not his right, his responsibility to share that wisdom with others. It was only fairness, in essence, that any wisdom he gained should be shared with others if they were capable of taking on such wisdom. Now, can you take on the knowledge of a god as a mortal being? Probably not, because their minds would be so much greater than our own. But he did teach his sons and the other members of the Aesir tribe, and perhaps also the Vanir tribe, although, as I say, that was an alliance. It wasn't, strictly speaking, the greatest of alliances. It was more of a ceasefire, so we say, than anything else. But they did. He did share his knowledge and wisdom, at least when it was important to do so. Okay, so he didn't jealously hoard it to himself and hold it on to all to himself. Okay, and what's interesting about Odin is that, of course, he, being the king of Asgard, was, of course, the patron god most of the time of pretty much all the gods, sorry, not all the gods, all the kings, or all the earls, all the royalty, essentially, of Nordic society. It would not make sense not to have the king of gods as your patron god, in that sense, okay? But he was also the patron god of outlaws, also. He had a very close connection to people who had been outlawed. Now, outlaws were very specific people, okay? Outlaws were people who had suffered a jurisdiction, essentially, a decision of court, ultimately, that they were to be outlawed from society. They underwent what's called outlawry, which was an old law, which basically banished them from all human dwellings, no matter how big or small, towns, villages, hamlets, has single house on the prairie, so to speak, whatever. They were not allowed anywhere near any human being. And so having outlawry processed on you and made an outlaw was a very, very big thing. It's something that the Nordic people did do, but they didn't do often because it was the ultimate punishment. It was seen as worse than execution because you then became of the wild. They basically thought that if you want to act or be of the wild, if you cannot be controlled, if you are like an animal, then you can go live with the animals. Ultimately, you can be of the Uttengard, which is the word, the Nordic word for essentially chaos. Essentially, you can be of the chaos, and you can be the destruction that you are to yourself, rather than to us and to others. And it was punishable by death if they went beyond this banishment, if they ever became across, even on a road. It didn't even matter if it was in a human dwelling, but if they ever had any form of human contact whatsoever, apart from with other outlaws, of course, then they would be, they could be, if they wanted, if the other people were part of civilization, which chances are they were, they could be killed on sight with no repercussions whatsoever. They had no value within society. They had lost the protection of society, and so outlaws were very much individuals that were hated, and but not necessarily hated. It gets a little bit more complicated because not everyone who was outlawed was a criminal, so to speak, a destructive, vindictive individual, which is typically what you have to be. You had to be a murderer, mass murderer. You have to be really bad to become an outlaw. But some people were made outlaws when they suffered what's under Celtic terms called the waking dream. But I've just recently finally discovered, after a long time of reading and searching, that the Vikings saw these people suffering from waking dream. They called them, or at least saw them, as being almost like shamanistic warriors. Okay, and the problem is, when you suffer from the waking dream in the early stages, it is very easy to lose one's mind, to go crazy, to either commit suicide or become completely destructive, to be overwhelmed by the Uttengard, the chaos, the destructive forces that your body is put under. And to suffer from the waking dream, there is some very specific criteria that must be met, and I'll be going over that later, because Odin, these are the kind of outlaws, ultimately, that Odin had an interest, or greater interest, in. He had interest in the normal outlaws, those who just wanted to misbehave, essentially, and were vicious and ferocious and got banned from society by being just basically brutal killers, because for him, he wanted to build an army at the end of the day, to protect himself in Ragnarok apocalypse. Okay, and what better type of people to protect himself than the outlaws, those who have survived the wild? If he took them under his embrace when they died and brought them to the halls of Valhalla, they would be quite fierce and great fighters in many respects, because that's how they got banned sometimes from their villages, by being too good and fighting the wrong people. But also the fact that they survived the outlawry. If they died fighting a bear or something, I mean, but they took the bear with them, then so be it. They kind of got some kind of value. And that's why he took interest in the outlaws, really. And also, I think, to be honest, it was more of a vacation to him, more than anything else. If you're the king of everywhere, I don't mean just the world, I mean the entire cosmos, the king of the entire cosmos, sometimes you're just going to want to let your hair down, literally, and go, well, sod it, I'm going to go for a break. And you're not going to end up probably being with the goody two shoes, are you? You're going to mix with probably people who are going to show you a good time. Now, Odin's name, if we look at it, translates literally as the Furious. And this is important, because it can be translated as the Furious or as the Master of Ecstasy. But to the Vikings, or to the Nordic people, complete ferocity and complete ecstasy were indistinguishable at times. You could, especially as a berserker, who were a member of those people, those shamanistic warriors that I mentioned earlier, if you could literally enter a trance or a state where your ferocity and your bestial nature almost became so terrifying that it literally gave you ecstasy. It invigorated your body, made it strong, made it impossible to destroy for a short period of time. Well, this is where essentially it all comes from. It all comes from the name Odin. Odin means all this, essentially. Odin, this ecstasy, this feeling of ecstasy that you feel, this feeling of ferocity and ecstasy mixed together that you feel when you become so enraged, so to speak, but yet still in complete control of what you're doing, is a perfect example of what the Nordic people saw Odin as. They saw that as Odin touching them, Odin blessing them, Odin being within them or being in their presence. When they got to that stance, into that state or that trance, so to speak, they truly believed that Odin was in their presence and was allowing them, or aiding them into getting into such a stance, a trance even, and such a state. And they were like, yes, Odin is here. Okay. And this ecstasy that Odin embodies sees itself really within all the different aspects that he would be seen as. Now, in Celtic mythology, and this is not the same as in Nordic mythology, there are no elder gods in Nordic mythology, but in Celtic paganism, in Nordic paganism, there were no elder gods. In Celtic paganism, there were elder gods such as death and things like this. Okay, go to Celtic god. he has a great channel there, and he'll be able to teach you better about the elder gods, because there's something that I don't really know that much about, because they're not part of my aspect of paganism. They're not considered. Instead, the younger gods, the gods like Odin, are the ones that I would concern myself with. The younger, but it still remains the point. An elder god is more like a force, death. It's just a force. It's an inevitable force, like gravity. You jump, you fall. You know you're going to fall. If you jump off a height, you're going to fall. But we all know that we're all going to grow old and die. And that's kind of death, if you know what I mean. I'm misrepresenting death there, because death was seen as mercy. Mercy. She came and released you from your body, your consciousness from your body, when your body simply was in too much pain for you to be able to continue anymore. Okay? It was too battered, it was too old, it was too frail, whatever. And she released you from your pain. Celtic people saw death as a mercy, but nonetheless, what I'm trying to say, it's more of that force, that sort of inevitability, that sort of almost not fate, but destiny. In the same way that destiny is unavoidable, there's certain things in life that are unavoidable, such as death, and as a result, death is an elder god, whereas Odin is not unavoidable. you could hide from him if you wanted, I suppose, and he is not a lesser god, a younger god, and as a result, he is the god of this and the god of that and the god of that, whereas the elder gods will never be described as the god of death or whatever. They're simply called death. Okay, that's a distinction that I just wanted to make. Now, Odin was the god of war, sovereignty, wisdom, magic, shamanism, poetry, and also the dead. Okay, so they were his aspects, so to speak. They were his disciplines that he was associated with, and we're going to discuss at least most of those. We'll put some of them together, because magic and shamanism, for example, they're basically the same thing, so I'll put them together probably. We're really going to discuss in detail each of these aspects of Odin in greater detail, so that you understand exactly how he was seen in each of these, why he was the god of war, or one of the gods of war. There were more than one god of war. Freya was a god of war, for example. Freya was also one of the gods of magic, for example. So and Hel, she was one of the goddesses of the dead. So there was a lot of overlap. There wasn't like exclusivity. There was not just one god of war, one god of death. It wasn't like that and it still isn't like that in paganism. There is an overlap between the gods, because their personalities, as I say, represent really what they were and what aspects they were given, and they were kind of given these aspects almost more so by us, I suppose, more than anything. If you've got a god who involves himself in war a lot, then you're going to think he's a god of war. But anyway, beyond that, let's start with that. That's a good place to start. War. Now, for a lot of you, you may be disappointed because in modern pop culture, Odin is often portrayed as a very honourable ruler and battlefield commander. Not to mention impossibly muscular. But to the ancient Norse, he was nothing like this. He was not a straight, honourable fighter or bringer of war. He used it underhand tactics like anything. He did not believe in honour in any way whatsoever. He believed you win under any cost whatsoever. And you'll see this in every single aspect. The ends always justify the means with Odin. Odin always justifies however he got wherever he got by what he's achieved, in complete contrast, for example, to the Celtic side of things, where the god Tyr is king. He was an honourable god. He is that typical honourable god who rules through justice and equality and everything like this. He would never use underhand tactics. He would fight in a one-on-one duel, and the winner is the winner of the battle, so that the other men don't die. That's kind of the things that Tyr would do. Odin wouldn't do that. Odin would just turn you into a slug or something and go, I win. Anyone else? That's what Odin would do. Odin does not fight fair, okay? And he's well known for not fighting fair. The only god really amongst the Aesir, to be fair, because the Aesir tribe of gods are a very warlike tribe of gods. These are a massive proportion of the Asgardian gods, the pantheon of gods that Vikings and the Norse prayed to, were Aesir, of the Aesir tribe. Some of them were of the Vinir tribe, but most were Aesir in nature, and only one who was actually pretty straightforward and noble in his actions and the way that he fought, that he would fight in one-on-one combat with no issues whatsoever, no qualms, no hesitation, was Thor, and Tyr, of course, as well. But Tyr was not the Tyr of the Celtic belief system as such, in Nordic belief system. And I really want to kind of, in many ways, sum this up, this fact that Odin not only didn't fight fair, but he also didn't give a shit who fought who. He was a god of war who didn't see there needed to be a just cause for war. War is war. It happens. And he would actually incite otherwise peaceful people who have peace alliances between themselves, people who have no problems with one another. He would incite otherwise peaceful people to strife, and he would influence them so that they go to war with one another, and he would do so with glee. He actually enjoyed taking peaceful people and making them make the decision to go to war with one another. This is summarized very neatly by Nietzsche. Is it the German philosopher Nietzsche? Is that how you pronounce it? That which does not kill you makes you stronger. That's one of the other things that he said. But Nietzsche's dictum, okay, and it sums it up beautifully how Odin saw war, and that is, you say it is the good cause that hallows even war. I say unto you, it is the good war that hallows any cause. Basically, the ends justify the means.